December 26, 2004. The day after Christmas. Beaches across Thailand, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, packed with tourists on holiday. Families building sandcastles, people swimming, hotels full. The kind of perfect tropical morning that makes you forget everything else. At 7:59 a.m., 250 kilometers off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, deep under the ocean, two tectonic plates shifted. One plate slid under the other. The ocean floor moved by about 15 meters in an instant. 250 kilometers of ocean floor. The energy released was equivalent to 23 0 nuclear bombs. The water above it had nowhere to go but out. A tsunami. Several waves, the largest reaching 30 meters high, moving at the speed of a jet aircraft across the open ocean, heading toward those beaches, where the families were building sand castles. What happened in the next few hours is the deadliest tsunami in recorded history. 227,000 people. 14 countries. One morning. But inside this story, one of the worst natural disasters in human history, are also some of the most remarkable stories of survival, heroism, and human ingenuity ever recorded, including a 10-year-old girl who saved 100 lives because she remembered something from a geography lesson. Okay, quick science break. Super simple. You know how when you drop something heavy into a bathtub, the water ripples outward? A tsunami works like that, except the bathtub is the ocean, and instead of dropping something in it, the floor of the ocean itself moves. The 2004 tsunami was caused by a megathrust earthquake, one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. A 9.1 on the Richter scale, the third largest earthquake in recorded history. Here is the key thing about tsunamis in deep ocean. In deep water, a tsunami wave is actually not very tall, maybe a meter or two, but it is incredibly fast, up to 800 kilometers per hour in deep water, the speed of a jet plane, and it carries an enormous amount of energy. As it approaches shallow water, as the ocean floor rises toward a beach, the wave slows down. But it does not lose that energy. Instead, the energy has nowhere to go but up. The wave builds and builds, and by the time it reaches the shore, it can be 10, 20, even 30 meters tall, moving at 50 kilometers per hour at the coast. That is fast enough that you cannot outrun it. And it is not just one wave. It is a series of waves, with minutes between them. The second wave is often larger than the first. Here is something extraordinary. In many places, the ocean gave a warning. Just before the tsunami waves arrived, something strange happened on the beaches. The water pulled back, way back. The tide went out further and faster than anyone had ever seen. In some places, hundreds of meters of wet sand were suddenly exposed. Fish were flopping on the exposed sea floor. To most people on the beaches that morning, this looked fascinating, curious, unusual. People walked out onto the exposed seafloor to look at the fish, to take photographs. They did not know that this was the warning. In many coastal cultures, particularly among indigenous communities in the Andaman Islands and some parts of Indonesia, there was traditional knowledge that said, if the sea pulls back suddenly, run for high ground immediately. Some communities did exactly that, and survived, but most tourists and many locals had never heard this. They stood on the exposed seafloor, curious, watching, and then the water came back. This is one of the most heartbreaking parts of the 2004 tsunami story, because for some people on those beaches, there were minutes, maybe 10 minutes, between the sea pulling back and the first wave arriving. 10 minutes. That is enough time to run, if you know what it means. And then the wave came. The first waves hit Banda Aceh in Indonesia at around 8:00 a.m., just minutes after the earthquake. Indonesia was the closest country to the epicenter. The waves there reached up to 30 meters in some areas. 30 meters. That is a 10-story building, moving, toward you, at 50 kilometers per hour. Banda Aceh was devastated. In some parts of the city, almost nothing was left standing. The destruction was total. The waves continued outward. Thailand, about 2 hours after the earthquake. Sri Lanka and India, about 2 hours after. The Maldives, Somalia in East Africa, 7 to 8 hours later. Somalia, On the other side of the Indian Ocean, 7 hours after an earthquake off the coast of Indonesia, the wave crossed an entire ocean, and it still killed people when it arrived. In total, 14 countries were affected. The death toll was over 227,000 people, making it the deadliest tsunami and one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. Now, the story I promised you. Tilly Smith was 10 years old on December 26, 2004. She was on Mai Khao Beach in Thailand with her parents and her sister. It was their Christmas holiday. At around 10 a.m., Tilly noticed something. The sea was behaving strangely. It was bubbling, frothing, pulling back. And Tilly Smith recognized it. 2 weeks before the holiday, her geography teacher at school in England, a man named Andrew Kearney, had taught her class about tsunamis. They had watched a video about a tsunami that had hit Hawaii in 1946. The video had shown exactly what Tilly was now seeing: the frothing water, the sea pulling back. Tilly grabbed her mother's arm. She said, "Mum, we have to get off this beach right now. There is going to be a tsunami." Her mother said, "What?" Tilly said, "Now. We have to go now." Her mother believed her. She started telling people on the beach. The beach was evacuated. About 100 people got off Mai Khao Beach. The tsunami hit minutes later. Mai Khao Beach was one of the very few beaches in Phuket where nobody died, because a 10-year-old remembered her geography lesson. Here is another thing that still fascinates scientists. The animals knew. Before the tsunami arrived at Yala National Park in Sri Lanka, one of the most wildlife-rich areas in the region, something strange happened. The animals moved inland. Elephants that had been at the coast in the morning moved to higher ground hours before the wave arrived. Flamingos that nest at low elevations flew to higher ground. Dogs refused to go to the beach. At the Patanangala beach inside the park, the tsunami killed dozens of people, but remarkably few wild animals were found dead. How? Scientists believe animals are sensitive to vibrations in the earth that humans simply cannot feel. The earthquake that caused the tsunami, 250 kilometers away, deep under the ocean, sent vibrations through the ground for hours before the wave arrived. Animals felt them and responded. There are also reports that some elephants gave distress calls and moved to higher ground while carrying tourists, effectively rescuing the people on their backs. We gave the animals our national parks. They may have returned the favor. The response to the 2004 tsunami was one of the largest international relief operations in history. Within days, countries around the world were sending aid. The United States, Australia, Germany, Japan, the UK, almost every major nation contributed. The total international aid pledged reached over $14 billion. Private donations poured in from millions of ordinary people. The outpouring of generosity was extraordinary, and it was complicated, because getting aid to the people who needed it in remote coastal villages, with destroyed roads and airports, with communication systems down, that was enormously difficult. In some areas, the second wave of the disaster was disease, contaminated water, displacement, people who had survived the tsunami dying in the weeks after from preventable illnesses. Aid organizations worked around the clock. Local communities showed extraordinary resilience, rebuilding, reorganizing, finding ways to help each other with or without outside assistance. The fishing communities of Tamil Nadu in India, which lost tens of thousands of people, began rebuilding their boats within weeks, because the sea had taken everything from them. And the sea was also how they fed their families. They went back. Here's one of the most important things about the 2004 tsunami. There was a warning system in the Pacific Ocean. It had existed since 1949. Seismic sensors, ocean buoys, a network that could detect tsunamis and warn coastal populations. It had been built after a devastating tsunami in Hawaii in 1946. But in 2004, there was no equivalent system in the Indian Ocean, because the Indian Ocean had not had a major tsunami in living memory. So nobody had built one. When the 2004 earthquake happened, scientists at the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in Hawaii detected it within minutes. They knew a tsunami had likely been generated. They tried to warn Indian Ocean countries. They did not have the phone numbers, There was no system, no protocol, no network. Some scientists made personal calls, sent faxes, tried to reach whoever they could through whatever channels they had. It was not enough. After the disaster, the world built the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System. It now consists of 140 seismic stations and 53 ocean buoys spread across the Indian Ocean. When a major earthquake occurs, warnings can be issued within minutes. Those warnings save lives. Because of what happened on December 26, 2004, I want to tell you about 3 more people. Arya Frizal was an Indonesian construction worker who was swept out to sea when the tsunami hit Aceh. He survived by clinging to debris. He was found 15 days later, still alive, still at sea. A container ship spotted him floating 160 kilometers from the coast. He had been in the ocean for 2 weeks. Malawati was a 22-year-old woman who survived in Aceh by climbing a palm tree and holding on for 5 hours while the water raged below her. When the water finally receded, she climbed down. Everything around her was gone. She was not. And John Croston was a British tourist who was in Phi Phi Island in Thailand when the tsunami hit. He helped organize survivors, directed people to higher ground, and worked alongside Thai rescue workers for days. He was a retired schoolteacher, on holiday, who decided that what needed doing was what he was going to do. Every disaster carries within it these stories. People who found something extraordinary inside themselves when everything fell apart. I think that is worth remembering. Here is something that most people do not know. The 2004 earthquake literally changed the shape of the Earth. The seabed moved by 15 meters in places. Some islands in the Andaman Sea actually moved 20 meters southwest in a single moment. The earthquake was so powerful that it wobbled the Earth's rotation very slightly, shortening the day by 268 microseconds. A microsecond is a millionth of a second. So no, you didn't notice. But it happened. The seafloor around Sumatra is permanently different now than it was before December 26, 2004. Some coral reefs were lifted above sea level. Some coastlines were lowered. Banda Aceh, the closest major city to the epicenter, was so severely damaged that the rebuilding effort essentially created a new city. It has better infrastructure now than it did before the tsunami. Not because destruction is good, but because when you have to rebuild from nothing, you build it better. Some communities rebuilt on higher ground. Some added seawalls. Some built evacuation routes and signs. The knowledge of what happened became part of the landscape, a reminder, permanently. Here is what the 2004 tsunami taught me. Knowledge saves lives, not money, not technology, not even luck, though luck played its part. Knowledge. Tilly Smith survived because her teacher had done his job well 2 weeks earlier. The Andaman indigenous communities survived because their ancestors had passed down knowledge of what a receding sea means. The early warning systems built after 2004 work because scientists shared everything they knew about how tsunamis behave. A 10-year-old girl, a geography lesson, 100 lives. That is the story the 2004 tsunami tells that I think matters most. Not the scale of the destruction, though it was enormous. Not the politics of the aid response, though that matters too. The fact that a child remembered something she was taught, and that knowing that one thing made all the difference. Every piece of knowledge you carry is a potential gift to someone else. You never know when it will be needed, and you never know when the sea will pull back. If stories like this stay with you, true stories, finally told simply, you already know what to do.